Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging headfirst into one of history's, most compelling enigmas, the Sea Peoples. Now picture this. The Late Bronze Age, roughly 1600 to 1200 BCE. This wasn't just any time. It was truly a golden age, a vibrant tapestry of powerful, interconnected empires all across the Mediterranean. We're talking about the mighty Mycenaeans in Greece, the formidable Hittites up in Anatolia, the rising Assyrians, and of course the dominant Egyptians, all woven together by these really intricate networks of trade and diplomacy. It was, a sophisticated, thriving global system. But then, around 1200 BCE, this incredible era faced a swift, sort of cataclysmic end, a collapse that really reshaped the ancient world forever. And for centuries, this widespread destruction has often been attributed to a mysterious force emerging from the sea, the so-called Sea Peoples. Okay. So our mission today is to unpack this story. We're going to dive deep into the records, particularly those the Egyptians left behind, to try and understand who these mysterious groups were, where they might have come from, and, the profound impact they had.
Consider this your shortcut to being truly well-informed about this really pivotal historical moment. To really set the scene, imagine the Late Bronze Age not just as, a collection of empires, but as a bustling highway of trade. Think about it. Vital resources like copper flowing in from Cyprus, precious tin arriving all the way from Afghanistan, glittering gold from Egypt itself. These weren't just luxuries. They were the very bedrock of a complex global economy. Superpowers of the day, capitals like Mycenae, Troy, Hattusa, Ugarit, Thebes. Their influence stretched across the known world. It was built on impressive connectivity.
It really was. It's fascinating how advanced it seems, but you see, it had these inherent vulnerabilities. This wasn't just a robust network. It was actually a delicate balance. Balance of power, intricate diplomacy, uninterrupted trade routes. If you imagine it like a house of cards, any single shock to that foundation, say a major drought, a localized conflict, or maybe a disruption to those trade lanes, and the whole structure could just come tumbling down. It was surprisingly quite fragile.
And that's exactly what happened, wasn't it? The shift around 1200 BCE was dramatic, almost apocalyptic. A literal wave of destruction just swept across the Mediterranean world. We see city after city, from the grand palaces of Mycenae in Greece to the mighty Hittite capital Hattusa to the great trading city of Ugarit on the coast of Syria, all sacked and burned. The archaeology is grimly consistent on this.
Yeah, and what's striking is the sheer finality. Ugarit, for instance, completely wiped from the map. But incredibly, its sophisticated clay tablets baked hard in the fire that destroyed it, they actually preserved this final, desperate cry for help. Something like, "The city is destroyed, everything is in ruins." Chilling stuff. Yet for all this destruction, most records are frustratingly silent on who exactly did it. They often just describe the attackers as, an unknown threat from the sea, bringing famine and disruption with them. And while other factors, things like climate change, severe drought, maybe internal rebellions, they undoubtedly weakened these empires from within, it really seems like the arrival of these so-called Sea Peoples delivered the final fatal blow. They were the catalyst, you might say, for total collapse.
So if so many civilizations went silent, that makes ancient Egypt absolutely crucial, right? It's the only major power that kind of weathered the storm and also left us a detailed record of the Sea Peoples. And specifically, the mortuary temple of Ramesses III at Medinet Habu. That's our primary source. What makes it so unique?
Oh, Medinet Habu's depictions are, stunning. Really vivid accounts of the conflict. They show this multi-pronged assault. You've got land forces marching towards the Nile Delta, and then a massive naval fleet engaging in these brutal sea battles. And the Egyptian records, they list various groups within this coalition. You have the Peliset, the Chaker, the Shurdan, the Shekelesh, the Denyen, the Weshesh, and the Teresh. Now, it's important to remember we use the modern term Sea Peoples for all of them, but the original Egyptian texts, they didn't actually slap the of the sea label on every single group. But what's really helpful are the visual details from the reliefs. You see the Peliset with their unique feathered helmets, and the Shurdan with their horned helmets, plus their distinctive weapons, round shields. These aren't just names on a list. We can actually see what they look like to some extent.
Okay, so Ramesses III wasn't just defending his borders, he was actively campaigning against them. You mentioned the Year 8 campaign is the best recorded. What did these fights look like? How did Ramesses respond?
Right. Ramesses' own commentaries, they really emphasized the massive scale of this onslaught. And this isn't just Egyptian propaganda. It's backed up by the widespread destruction of major states like Hatti, Ugarit, Ascalon, Hazor, all around this exact time. What's crucial to understand, though, is that these were likely not just military operations. The Medinet Habu reliefs support this because they show Peliset and Sheker warriors accompanied by women and children in ox carts. That suggests whole populations on the move, by land and sea, looking for new places to settle, not just raiding parties. Ramesses claims some big victories. In a Year 5 campaign, he supposedly repelled a two-pronged attack, sea and land, trapping their fleet in the Nile mouth. Then, in Year 8, against what he called a conspiracy in their isles involving the Peliset, Jeker, Shekelish, Denyen, and Washesh Ramesses, ambushed their fleet and routed their land army near Jeshi. That's in modern-day southern Lebanon. Among his captives, he specifically lists the Sheridan of the Sea, Teresh of the Sea, and the Peliset. Other Egyptian texts, like Papyrus Harris, they back this up. Ramesses claims he slew the Denyen in their isles, burned the Traker and Peliset. He even settled some captured Sheridan and Wishesh within Egypt itself. And looking a bit later, texts like the Onomasticon and Menupi from around 1100 BC give some slight credence to the idea that some groups settled in Canaan. It lists the Sheridan, Checker, and Peliset right after Philistine place names. And the story of Wenemon places the Checker specifically in Dor on the coast.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating for me. The identity of the Sea Peoples. It's still one of the most hotly debated topics in archaeology, isn't it? Were they a unified, organized invasion force, like a coordinated attack? Or were they more like a desperate flood of refugees, maybe driven by famine, drought, economic collapse back home? Or could they have even been, say, displaced mercenaries, experienced fighters looking for new opportunities after their old employers, the big empires, collapsed? What do the clues suggest?
Those are exactly the right questions. And honestly, the evidence points toward a really complex picture, not just one simple answer. Let's look at some specific groups. For the Peliset, there's a very strong identification with the later Philistines, the people we know from biblical texts. They likely originated somewhere in the Aegean cultural area, maybe Crete, maybe nearby islands. The Bible sometimes calls this area Kaftor. And supporting this link, well, you have the discovery of Aegean-style Philistine bichrome pottery that's a distinctive two-color pottery at their settlement sites. And even recent genetic evidence from places like Ashkelon suggests European immigrants arrived, who then quite quickly mixed with the local populations. Then you've got the Sheridan. Their distinctive horned helmets, the ones we see at Medinet Habu, that's led to a proposed link with the Nuragic civilization of Sardinia. There are some possible name similarities, onomastics, and we also find 12th century Nuragic pottery at sites like Pila Kokkinokhromos in Cyprus, suggesting connections. For the Shekelish, well, a connection to Sicily is hypothesized, but the evidence is pretty sparse. They might also be the seafaring Shekelayu mentioned in some Hittite records. What about the Greeks? Well, some scholars tentatively identify the Ekresh and the Denyen with ancient Greek peoples, specifically the Akshaiwoi, the Achaeans, and the Danaoi, the Danaians, names we know from Homer's epics, like the Iliad. Although an intriguing detail, the Ekresh were depicted as circumcised in Egyptian reliefs. That caused some scholars to doubt a Greek origin because, well, Greeks generally weren't circumcised. The Jekers are often associated with the story of Wenemon we mentioned. They seem to have settled along the coasts of early Palestine, developing places like Tel Dor into significant centers. Their exact origins uncertain. Crete, or the Tukri tribe of northwest Anatolia, have been suggested, but that latter one is considered pretty much pure speculation. And then you have groups like the Luka. They're known from lots of Hittite and Egyptian records, located down in Lycia in southwestern Anatolia. They were described as highly mobile, decentralized, sort of famously fractious raiders and pirates who fought both against and for the Hittites at different times. We also see the Karkia, another Western Anatolian group governed by a council, not a king. They had relations with the Hittites, but weren't part of their empire. And finally, the Washesh are the most mysterious, really only found in Ramesses III's documents, with no clear visual representation identified.
Wow. So what does this patchwork quilt of origins and evidence really mean, it sounds like? The truth is probably a combination of all these theories. Not one single group, but maybe a perfect storm. Environmental issues, economic collapse, political instability, all sending this diverse wave of desperate armed people surging across the Mediterranean. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair assessment, absolutely. And to trace their footprints even further back, we can look at earlier Egyptian records too. Significantly, the Ramesses II narrative from 1210 BC mentions the Sheridan. In his second year, a Sheridan attack on the Nile Delta was fought off. They came boldly sailing in their warships from the midst of the sea, none being able to withstand them. But intriguingly, these captured Sheridan were later incorporated into the Egyptian army. They even fought for Ramesses at the famous Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites in his 5th year. Shows their skill as fighters. Then move forward just a bit to the Merneptah narrative, around 1200 BC. We find his battle against the Nine Bows Confederacy, that's a traditional Egyptian term for their enemies. And here, the Ekwesh are explicitly designated of the countries of the sea in the Great Karnak inscription and the Athribis stele. So that connection is undeniable.
Right. But it's important, as you say, to look beyond just Egypt. What about other ancient documents? Do they give us any more clues? Maybe even before the main collapse?
They absolutely do. The Amarna letters, for example. This is a collection of diplomatic letters from the mid-14th century BC, so well before the main collapse. And surprisingly, they mention some of these groups. They refer to the Denyen. The Luca are accused of attacking Egyptians working with Cypriots. Cyprus reported the Lucca seizing their villages. The Sheridan are also mentioned, sometimes as renegade mercenaries, sometimes just as individuals, like 3 men slain by an Egyptian overseer. Another fascinating, though much earlier, detail comes from Byblos. An obelisk, the Abishemu obelisk, maybe from 2000 or 1700 BC, mentions Kukunis, son of Lucca the Latian, a very early potential link to the Lucca people. But perhaps the most poignant are the Ugaritic texts from the early 12th century BC. They vividly foreshadow the city's own destruction. One letter talks about a man kidnapped by Shekala, probably the Shekelesh described as people who lived on ships. Even more gut-wrenching is the correspondence between Ugarit's last king, Amurapi, and the king of Eliseo, which is Cyprus. They're discussing an enemy fleet of 20 ships, and Amurapi is explaining his desperate situation, unable to defend his city because his own troops are away. And shortly after, both Ugarit and Eliseo were destroyed. These aren't just dry records, they feel like the last cries of a dying age.
So Ramesses III, he successfully repelled the Sea Peoples, he secured Egypt, but that victory still came at a huge cost. It wasn't exactly a clean win, was it?
No, indeed. For Egypt, the consequences were profound. Their treasury was depleted, the military was weakened, and their international prestige took a massive hit. This really marked a major turning point. It signaled the beginning of the end for the Great New Kingdom period. Egypt entered this long period of decline, political fragmentation. It never truly recovered its former glory, not in the same way. But the effect across the wider Mediterranean was even more profound. The old empires were just gone, their magnificent palaces ruined, their vital trade networks severed. It was a dark age in many ways. Yet, from the ashes of all that destruction, something new did emerge, the Iron Age. This brought new technologies, new people settling in new places, new ideas, which eventually paved the way for the great civilizations of the classical era, like Greece and Rome. It was a total reset.
And so the Sea Peoples, despite remaining this fundamental mystery in so many ways, they were truly the silent architects of a new world, a force of change that brought an entire age to a, cataclysmic end. The story of the Sea Peoples really is a gripping tale. It's got mystery, widespread destruction, and a truly world-changing collapse. We've explored the vibrant world they disrupted, the fragments of evidence they left behind, especially in Egypt, and the enduring debate over their true, diverse identities. So what final secret to those stunning reliefs of Medinet Habu still hold? What more could they reveal about these shadowy invaders who changed the world forever? We hope this deep dive has sparked your own quest for knowledge. There's always so much more of the past still waiting to be